Hi everyone. I'm going to talk a bit about Open Y, which is a platform and partnership between YMCAs built on Drupal. And just to give you a little bit of an overview, I'm going to start off talking a little bit about the YMCA and then why they need this. Then I'll go into some details about what exactly it is, what features it has, and then kind of how we built it and how we're continuing to build it. So just a little bit about myself. I'm the manager of strategic initiatives at FFW. My job is entirely working with YMCAs and the Open Y project. And I spend too much time thinking about reptiles. So, Open Y is YMCA-led. It started off with the YMCAs of the Greater Twin Cities, who were conducting a redesign of their website. The Twin Cities is one of the largest YMCAs in the country and really the world. And they thought, as they're building out their website, there are a lot of things that other YMCAs could benefit from. So they started this initiative and it grew dramatically. So I'll talk a little bit about that. The YMCA in general is maybe larger than a lot of people realize. There are, almost 3,000 locations across the U.S. Those are physical buildings, but what really matters with YMCAs is the association, which is usually based around like a region or a city, and that might have multiple branches. So, for instance, locally, we have the YMCA of Western North Carolina, and thank you. And they have probably, about 10 different branches? I'm not sure exactly. As a whole, the YMCA is ranked the largest charity in the United States. It serves millions of people a year, and it's not just based in the United States, it's worldwide. Not every country, but a good chunk of them. It's been around for quite a while, and it's generally considered one of the largest nonprofit brands in the United States, along with the United Way and Red Cross. It was founded 170 some years ago, and spread very quickly. Most of the major YMCAs that we have in the United States were founded in like the 1850s, 1860s. And every YMCA is different. It is a federated organization. I mentioned that things are organized around those cities or regions. That's referred to as an association, and they range from tiny little associations that barely have one building to associations like the Twin Cities or New York City, where they may have dozens and run multiple maybe 30 different branches and as many different camps and other sorts of locations. One of the interesting things and one of the big challenges with YMCAs is that they don't have the same structure. Each YMCA, as I mentioned, is different. They each have their own different governing structures. Some of them are, even if they have 10 different branches, really all the administration happens out of those branches. Others, the Twin Cities, for instance, has moved to a very centralized system over the last few years, and they have programming that gets run out of the branch, but all of the administrative things, the marketing and IT and all of that gets run centrally. So, I'm talking about the YMCA. It has a long history, and I'm guessing people have their own associations with it. Usually, you think of at least for me, I have strong sensory associations of the smell of chlorine and of childhood, and the old tiles from the early 70s around the pool and all that. And you think of kind of the YMCA as this sort of old-fashioned thing. It's very comfortable, but it's also been historically a center for real innovation. In terms of things that have been developed at the YMCA or by the YMCA, we're looking at, everything from basketball to Father's Day. What you'll notice here is that most of these things are not new. Think racquetball and jazzercise. We have the YMCA to thank for jazzercise. We're, I think, both in the 1960s. And since then, the Y hasn't really been known as this forward-thinking organization. So that's really kind of one of the impetuses for Open Y as well, is that the Y leadership wants to be and wants to think of themselves as this center for innovation within the community and within the country. So Open Y is really, among many YMCAs, they see that as part as in addition to this list here. So what is Open Y? In the YMCA's minds, it has three parts. The first is really just that common commitment to collaboration and innovation. And then there's the community itself, the YMCAs that have committed to this movement, as well as the digital partners. And won't really get too much into the digital partners, but that includes both Drupal agencies, multiple Drupal agencies, as well as other digital agencies and marketing agencies and groups that offer technologies surrounding physical fitness and all of these things that have committed to working together. And then the third part of it is really the digital platform, and that's built on Drupal. And I'm not going to get too much into it, but they decided on Drupal because it was widely used by YMCAs in the first place. They did a survey of YMCAs, and about 40% of the ones that they talked to were already using Drupal in some version. That, along with its flexibility and its community, made it a very easy choice. So, why Open Y? The first reason is that individual YMCAs, particularly small YMCAs, have very limited resources. But if they come together, they can accomplish great things, right? And when I say they come together, I mentioned every YMCA is different, but they do have a lot of common goals. And particularly with what they're looking for, digitally, with their websites, with all of their online services, they're mostly looking for the same things. I mean, some Ys have very specific goals. One might be focused very strongly on childcare. Another might be very strongly focused on the camps that they offer for kids, or summer sports programs. Others might be focusing on some very different things. For instance, work with the YMCA of Greater Houston, and they've been the largest refugee settlement agency in the state of Texas, which is not something that most YMCAs have to deal with, but that presents all kinds of specific needs that they have that other YMCAs don't. Both in terms of service provision and in terms of multilingual needs. So they have common goals. They also have common brand standards. YUSA, which is a sort of umbrella organization that focuses on setting policies for Ys across the country. They mostly work with the smaller Ys, but they work with all Ys in general, has put forth a set of brand standards that all Ys should be adhering to. So between those things, there's a great deal of commonality between what YMCAs are looking for and what they need. Also, when we look at Ys, those really small Ys, I mentioned, they may not have the resources of a larger Y, they have limited resources. With something like Open Y, they get a great website out of the box that they would never be able to afford on their own. The larger Ys, are going to want more customization. They're going to want, their features that help refugees, their specialized programs, their own, custom design that, still matches the brand standards, but, gives them a bit more individuality. And, they can get these things, and then they can contribute them back to the platform so that all of the other Ys can benefit from them. So, what is it? At its base level, it's a Drupal distribution. Is everyone familiar with Drupal distributions are? Probably not. So a Drupal distribution is really just a version of Drupal that comes bundled together with a particular set of modules and some preset configuration. It could be very simple. You could have a Drupal distribution that all it did had like one extra module in it, or all it did was, when you installed it, it gave itself, the website name of, my Drupal distribution. That would technically be a Drupal distribution. Not a very exciting one. Open Y comes with quite a bit. And, the idea is that, a small Y can install it, do a little bit of configuration, add their content, and have, a tremendous world-class website. So, in terms of what it has a number of, custom modules, but it also comes with a lot of just kind of pre-configured content types and things like that. So, in terms of content types, you have your typical like blog posts and landing pages and things of that sort, but we also have custom pages for branches, camps. We have structures that are set up to show different types of like group exercise classes, and things of that sort, different programs. And let's see. The features around it, these, speaking generally, we wanted to have a flexible content structure. These are almost goals, right? We wanted to make sure that media management was easy. We wanted to make sure that it was, responsive, mobile-friendly, brand compliant in terms of the design that it comes with. We wanted to make sure that it was friendly to use for people who may not be technical, people who might be writing blog posts, have a content editing workflow. I can almost speak. That might need approval, or depending on who's writing these things, and that those blog posts or other pieces of content could be scheduled in advance to be published. We wanted to make sure that people who came from a small YMCA who installed this and were able to understand how to use it. So we wanted to make sure that we had demo content. So instead of struggling and trying to figure out what a branch content type is, they could look at the example and just substitute in their own content if they needed to. And we wanted to make sure that it integrated with third-party systems that YMCAs use. So, more specifically, in terms of features that YMCAs use, if you're a YMCA that has more than one branch, you're going to want something like a map of your branches and all your different facilities. If you offer group exercise classes or other sorts of classes, you're going to need schedules. And that's something that pretty much all YMCAs that I've seen use. And currently I work with 11 different YMCAs across the country. So. We wanted to make sure that when people were creating content, that they had flexible components that they could use, whether that's galleries or banners or advertisements for programs that could show up in blocks, maybe between typical paragraphs of text. And we use the paragraphs module in Drupal for that, if you're familiar with that. We created a membership wizard so that pretty much all YMCAs sell memberships. Those vary. Sometimes they have different prices depending on what branch you join. They often have family memberships versus individual adult memberships versus memberships for children. And so we created a wizard that lets you flexibly define those different membership types and narrow down the sort that you want your members to choose. Branches and camps, each of those have their own sort of subsection of the website with secondary navigation. So if you have multiple camps, they could each have their separate camp registration page or their separate staff pages, things like that. And we wanted to make sure that the website was accessible. We worked very closely and are still working very closely with an organization based out of the Twin Cities called Blind Inc. It's run by people who are blind, and they do accessibility testing and reporting. So I mentioned the paragraphs module. This is here a screenshot of the default front page with the demo content that it comes with. And each of those bracketed sections is a separate component. The first is like the main page banner. The second is a pre-built view of blog posts, and that's the only dynamic one there. The third and fourth just are multi-column text areas. I think the fourth one has like a button there. So you probably can't see this very well, but if you access my slideshow afterwards, or I'll show you a place online where you can actually log in and see just an example of how this is put together on the back end. So, in terms of some of our other features that I've mentioned, the blog, for instance, is very straightforward. But at the same time, it does allow you to add additional components, like I've mentioned. So if you wanted to add a gallery of images to your blog post, you could. If you wanted to add, let's see, what other components do we have? If you had a blog post about a class, there is a component that links to specific class schedules or class descriptions, things of that sort, and those are all dynamic. Here we see like a related content, related content component that is a link to another blog post, and that from the back end you can just easily add that to the sidebar. So this is all pretty straightforward in the world of Drupal distributions. It's obviously fairly specialized, and we've done quite a bit of work in building out the various content types components and other entities. But where things really get different, I think, with Open Y is in our integration with third-party services. So YMCAs depend very much on their CRM systems, which they use for membership management. The vast majority of YMCAs, I think it's over 80%, use a system called Daxco, which is based in Alabama. The Twin Cities YMCA, who were the first ones that we worked with, use a system called Personify. Others, like the YMCA of Greater Seattle, who I've worked with, use Active Network. Those are the three, I think the three most widely used membership management systems among YMCAs. There are a few others, CCC, some use various homebrewed or Oracle systems. But we wanted to make sure that whatever we built into the distribution could connect to whatever third-party membership management system was being used. And a lot of these include some extra functionality, like Active Network handles group exercise classes, which the others don't really. I think Daxco might have some functionality around it. They all handle e-commerce, and so they're sort of the e-commerce platforms that we connect to as well. You see I have here couple of other things, GroupX Pro, which is a very commonly used third-party system for managing group exercise classes. Most YMCAs have free group exercise classes for members. And GroupX Pro is also used, as is MindBody, which I'll get to in a moment, by a lot of other gyms and things like that. And MindBody is used for managing personal training and scheduling personal training. So people can go online, choose their location, see what personal trainers are available and what time slots, reserve those, that sort of thing. So the system was designed to work with those as well, or other third-party systems that play the same role. And in addition, there are other things that we're looking at. HR systems. Most of the Ys that I've worked with use Kronos Workforce Central, but we tried to be agnostic. Digital asset management, and various Internet of Things technologies. One of the projects that I'm working on, I actually gave a talk at DrupalCon about it, was focusing on digital signage and like room entry screens. So outside those group exercise studios, we're pulling data directly from GroupX Pro, running it through Screen Cloud, putting like in real time, what group exercise session is going on, who that instructor is, and what's coming up next. There's also mobile technologies. Both, Dexco has a mobile app. We've also worked very closely with an organization called NetPulse, who works with a ton of fitness groups and gyms and things of that sort, and done some integration there as well. So what sort of integration are we talking about? It really depends on what APIs are available, right? But for most of these things, what we're looking at are synchronization of content, whether that's schedules or class descriptions or products, which might be like membership products or T-shirts or whatever, or different programs like a swimming lesson, right? Single sign-on where we can achieve that. We've done that with Personify and Active Network and a few others. Daxco, we're still working on getting them to let us do that. We have a really good relationship with really all these organizations, but some of them it takes a little while for them to provide APIs that they haven't in the past. And then all kinds of, I mentioned all kinds of e-commerce. So, we try to really decouple from any specific system. We want to make sure that, we can hook into e-commerce systems, but we're not predetermining what those are. So that any sort of if someone comes along with a new membership management system that's not one of the ones we've built integrations for, they're not going to have to modify what we've built to connect to that. And we also make sure that any core contributed modules are unblemished so that we can upgrade freely. And we've not really had much in the way of problems with Drupal upgrades so far. I shouldn't say that out loud because it means we will next time. All right, so how does this all come together? I mentioned that things started with Twin Cities. What we actually ended up building for the Twin Cities looks almost nothing like what Open Y looks like today. We further refined that when we worked with subsequent YMCAs. We didn't even originally introduce paragraphs until we started working with Seattle, and then we built the Houston website, and the Houston website was almost Open Y. Our first actual release of Open Y was at the end of January, and Seattle had launched their website in December, so most of the development had been done quite a bit beforehand. There have been additional YMCAs that have come along in the meantime, and each of them are really contributing something, even if it's just QA, right? We have a base theme currently that's based on the Seattle theme, but we're developing a new component-based theme for the YMCA of Greater Dayton, and it's gorgeous, and it's going to get contributed back into Open Y, which will be a really nice addition. So that's just an example of something really concrete that's coming from one of the other projects. And anytime we start working with a new YMCA, one of the first things that we do, and when I say we, I don't just mean like FFW, I mean like the Open Y initiative, really. One of the first things we say is, hey, we understand if you can't, but if you can, really consider trying to contribute back whatever you produce. So, in terms of what the greater organization is looking to do, in addition to producing a great platform, they're also looking to really just pool their resources in a wide variety of ways. That leveraging the limited resources thing I mentioned, and some of that's feature development for the platform, but it could also be third-party services. I mentioned digital asset management. They're looking at getting a nationwide account with one of these digital asset management providers, letting any YMCA join in and sharing imagery, videos, blog posts, all of that across the Ys. One of the things that we find can be really hard for a lot of Ys is just like finding imagery. They all want smiling people working out or whatever that represent their communities, but they also don't want to use stock photography, which means that they have to schedule photo shoots, and inevitably whatever photo shoots they schedule don't provide the images that they're going to need in 3 months, so then they have to do another. But if all the YMCAs that are part of this initiative can share and do different sorts of shoots, then they have a much larger pool of imagery to pull from. And blog posts are similar. Like every YMCA is going to do like be healthy over the holidays blog post, right? And having a few of those in a central repository that they can pull out and tweak if they want, is going to be a ton more efficient than everyone writing their own. We've also looked at group hosting arrangements. Whether I think they've talked about like Aqua Site Factory for some things, or really just sharing like a hosting account among like several small Ys, because the smaller Ys that don't have more than one or two branches, they don't have that many. They don't have like the need for like huge performance and capacity for hosting. So sharing something between them is going to be a lot more efficient. It also means that they can save on hosting support. And also, we're looking at knowledge sharing. I gave you the list of earlier of like all these common digital goals, right? And a lot of the YMCAs we work with don't necessarily realize what they need. They'll know some of that, but then we'll talk to them and we'll say, oh, but when we were talking to Houston, they were looking at these 4 things also, and they say, oh yeah, those are great. We want to do that too. So we can use knowledge from previous YMCAs as shortcuts to discovery. Design like templates for doing content inventories and asset inventories of existing YMCA sites to help them with migration. In terms of like deciding what to keep and what to scrap. We can do, particularly if we have a common platform, we can do A/B testing and work with analytics that could benefit anyone using that platform, which is tremendous. Identify, so a good example here is the YMCAs have their own like internal language. Almost every YMCA has a pool. They always talk about their aquatics programs. Normal people, when they're looking to use a pool or get swimming lessons, they're not going to use aquatics as a search term. They're going to look for swimming or something like that. So identifying places like that where, just in terms of language and information architecture, word choice that, YMCAs use is clearly suboptimal. We can test that. And I mean, that's a kind of an obvious case, but there are a lot of non-obvious ones. And all the YMCAs can benefit from it. So, how does this come together? The group itself, there's both YMCAs and there's the digital partners. Twice a year so far, and this has happened 3 times. We've had Open Y summits. The first of these was in the Twin Cities. Then there was one in Chicago, and the most recent one was this past February, just after we released the first version of Open Y in Houston. And the Houston summit had about 100 people there, so I think the first one, which I actually wasn't at, had maybe a dozen, so things have been growing. We have openymca.org, which will serve increasingly as a repository for documentation and communication for members of the group. There's a Slack group. We have a page on Drupal.org for the distribution, as well as space on GitHub. And the YMCAs themselves have what they refer to as a core team, and then they have monthly calls and a newsletter that goes out. The core team, which is really still in development, they haven't finalized exactly what the structure is and how people are going to be determined to be on it, is really sort of the leadership team. Right now, it's been people who step up and are willing to do the work, right? As is often the case with initiatives that start out. And I'll talk a little bit about, right now actually. So the big thing that the core team is doing right now is focusing on defining what features get into Open Y and prioritizing the backlog. So right now we're using a real simple system. We look at simple ratings for what's the demand from YMCAs across the country, what have people asked for, what's the expected impact, because sometimes people ask for things that are fairly trivial, other times not as many people ask for things, but you see that it would make a huge difference. And then what's the effort involved, and if it's higher effort, then obviously everything else being equal, we're not going to do that one first. And then so we get priority score out of that. Define user stories for everything. And that's usually a very collaborative process. A lot of that happens through those monthly calls in terms of defining what that demand is, helping to refine some of those user stories. So, I mentioned openymca.org. You can check that out. Currently it's mostly kind of a brochure site, but it does list out who the digital partners are, who the YMCAs that are part of this initiative are in terms of those who are committed to using Open Y and those who are evaluating it and haven't quite made that step and said, yeah, this is the direction we're going, but we like the idea. More interestingly, I suspect for most of you, you can check out sandbox.openY.org. I'm sorry, sandbox.openymca.org, which is a sandbox site of the installation with all the demo content. It refreshes every 2 hours. I don't believe that it's refreshing today, unfortunately, because CK editor was down and it caused all sorts of problems. The username and password are there. Feel free to log in as admin and check it out. You can also get the code itself. We have a project on Drupal.org, and we also have we're also on GitHub. GitHub also has installation instructions and good bit of documentation. It's mostly, at this point, still developer documentation, but we are putting together user guides and a series of videos. So people are welcome to contribute any way they can. We've had people from a wide variety of different agencies contribute. We had a contribution sprint at DrupalCon and another actually significant, very large contribution sprint at Drupal Camp Kiev, which was organized by some members of my team. So that was pretty cool. And even people who aren't coders, developers, can contribute via testing, documentation, generating best practices. If you've worked with YMCAs or similar agencies, organizations, your input is very welcome. So, questions? No questions?
Yeah, I was going to wait to see if anybody else.
No, go ahead.
Like, we're more higher education, we work for a university, but like a lot of what you've said in this presentation from a communication to stakeholder standpoint is pretty applicable to us.
Yeah, I mean, we do anticipate that the distribution will be used by organizations that are not YMCAs. And,
yeah, I can see this being used by our campus recreation department because they're essentially like a YMCA in many of the same things.
Particularly like any organization that uses any of those third-party systems, which obviously like non-YMCAs use. I know that there's been some interest by JCCs, which follow a very similar model to YMCAs, and other, community center type organizations. A few gyms have, taken a look at it, things like that. So, campus recreation department makes perfect sense.
So I was interested to see. I was thinking, this is probably a little more old hat. It's probably on Drupal 7, but I look in there.
Oh no, it's Drupal 8.
All Drupal 8. We've got all kinds of modules integrated and pretty neat. So I'm looking forward to just firing it up and taking a look at it. I'm guessing that if you install by Composer, that you're going to, and then install the database, that you're going to get almost a functional site.
Yeah. I mean, if you take a look at the sandbox, which you're welcome to do right now, that's what you'll get. That just runs the installation every 2 hours. So, other questions? Go ahead. We'll come back.
I was just curious about the schedules. I'm also in education, community college. And the schedule data, there's a lot of data. I was looking at the demo and some of the locations. Where does that data get? How does that get input? What format?
You're talking about the schedules?
The schedule.
Yeah, so there are a couple of ways you can do it. So there are content types for classes to define like the general class information as well as sessions of each class. So that's where the schedule data comes from. You can enter that manually if you need to, but on most of the sites that we're working with, we're pulling that data usually from GroupX Pro. And so there's separate integration module that allows that synchronization. But if you wanted to do everything manually, you could. For the YMCA of Greater Seattle website, we're pulling that information from Active Networks instead. So it's not wedded to GroupX Pro.
Being really new to Drupal development, I mean, I've kind of jumped in and installed several distributions and just started figuring out how to do stuff from a front-end developer's perspective and from a systems administrator's perspective. And then yesterday we got some training on the stuff in the middle. But thinking about the different distributions and how they're tailored, yours is Open Y, and there's Open EDU, and it's got several modules. If you're comparing distributions and you find some features in one distribution that you'd really like to have in your site, what is the sort of strategy that you would go through to do that? Would you say, okay, here's the modules that I need to support that, and then maybe here's the content types? And that sort of thing?
It really depends on how the distribution is built. So we tried to build this in such a way that you could, pull the modules off, as much as possible. There are some dependencies, obviously, so like the Group X Pro module that I was just talking about is not going to work without that content structure in place, right? So there's, I don't remember exactly what it's called, but there's like a class and session type module or set of modules that are, requirements for that Group X Pro module. So, you could pull that series of modules if you wanted to, run that subsystem on another website. That's not always the case, because sometimes you have, this vast web of interdependency between, some of those like low-level modules, and some distributions are better at separating those out than others. I think we did a pretty good job on Open Y, but that doesn't necessarily mean that other distributions follow the same pattern. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah.